conectando con nuestra comunidad. Esto es ¿Qué pasa Boston?
¿Qué pasa Boston? I hope that you're bringing your coats, or actually, if it's summer, we're going to be told exactly what type of weather we are experiencing. But here at the studio, it's pretty warm. I got to tell you, it's so warm because we have somebody that has done so much for the community, has done so much for us in New England. And I'm sure that once you hear that voice, you recognize him. Welcome, Kevin Lemanowicz. I always pronounce it wrong.
Oh, you're doing great.
Lemanowicz.
Lemanowicz.
It's my Irish accent.
Yeah, of course.
You have to forgive me for that.
Great to be here, Gabby.
Thank you so much for coming, for accepting this interview. I know that for you, it's like probably going back to square one where you started.
I told you earlier, and I'll say it here. I don't know if anybody really wants to hear what I have to say, so I'm really happy that you asked me.
I do want to hear it, and I'm sure that the people that are listening to our show wants to hear it. So, tell me about your story. How do you start here in Boston? Are you from Boston? What's your tie to this beautiful city?
Okay, I'll start, and you stop me at any point.
Yes.
So I came here in 1996. I was working in Hartford, Connecticut as a meteorologist on television there after college, and we launched in September of 1996. It was then called Fox News Boston, and it eventually became Fox 25 News, and then eventually Boston.
Were you ever
News.
in that little corner in Boston, like in front of the State House? There was an office there,
Yes,
right?
there was an office on Beacon Hill, which I loved. That came midway through my time in Boston, and they would send me down there a couple days a week to do the weather. I loved it because, Gabby, I would do the weather early, then I would change and go for a run around the Common, and then get ready for the late news after that. And nobody could bother me. There were no managers there. It was just me. I'd take a call, but out of sight, out of mind. As long as I got the weather on the air. So those are some of my favorite days.
And so, go back to your college days. You come from Connecticut to Boston, right?
Yes.
And how do you find this job?
So this was a step up from the Hartford station, which happened to also be a Fox affiliate, Fox 61 in Hartford. And the news director there, Colleen Marin, was brought to Boston to start this station. And at first she had said, you're still young. I was only 26. So she said that, you're probably still too young to come to Boston. It's a major market, a couple more years. But that summer they ended up calling me to come up for an interview. And so I came up, had a little war going between the station in Milwaukee and the station in Boston, because I was definitely leaving Hartford, and ended up, once Boston made the call, I was like, geez, of course I'm going to Boston. I love Boston. Why wouldn't I do that? Yeah. And here I was.
And I bet you that it was also a challenge, right? Like, let me see what the weather in Boston is like to just describe it and manage it. Tell me, how was your, or what inspired you to become a meteorologist?
Very good question. It all starts with baseball. That was my love.
What?
Yeah, and in this way. So when I was a kid, really, I had and people don't realize, because you see people on TV or in broadcasting, they think we all must come from a rich background or have lots of money. That's just not the case. We have a job like anybody else, and it's not to say you can't make a good living at it if you get to a high level, but I started out as, a very, very poor kid upbringing. So baseball was my lifeline. I played it every day after school, wiffle ball or baseball, whatever it was. But then when I got into playing in Little League, I would dread the rainouts. And if it rained, I was heartbroken. So that first got me interested in watching the weather reports on TV, because I wanted to know if I could play baseball the next day. And it went from there. And so the interest started there. I grew in school, had some great teachers. My 8th grade teachers, Mrs. LaChance and Mr. Burton, are two that I always mention, because they really sparked the communication side and the science side in me to put together, and went from there. So when I went to college, Gabby, I had to pick a place that had meteorology classes, just because I wanted to learn more about it. Still wasn't sure it's what I was going to do, and ended up.
It just piqued your interest.
Yes.
How is it? And this show is to give resources and to provide a lot of tools to our community. Mm-hmm. What if our children nowadays would like to have that as a career? What was the science back then? What's the science now? Is it still a good choice to go for a meteorologist career?
It is a good choice, but with this caveat, you must love the science. And I say that because it's not easy to become a professional meteorologist, do the course of study, is a lot of math, very math intensive, which threw me, almost stopped me from becoming a meteorologist. It was so difficult. And something you do if you love the science, the part about meteorology is that it touches every science. It touches how you feel, that's biology. Things move, that's physics. It touches, of course, is math, but how the temperature is, that's something called thermodynamics. The atmosphere is like a river, that's fluid dynamics. And these are all courses you take in college, just like engineers do. So it's not an easy course of study. And typically meteorologists, again, yes, you can make a living at it, but you're not going to get rich doing it. So it's a really hard course of study, and it doesn't really equate to, as far as the difficulty, to what a typical meteorologist makes
How
for
about the
money.
technology, though, that you have available right now? Is it still
Incredible.
as difficult to be part of it and learn it and apply it?
Yes, it's even more difficult in some ways because a lot of it has gone toward, and computer models are a big part of it, and that's all math based as well. But now coding has come into play. AI models are now happening. There are a lot of avenues. So if people listening to us want to be meteorologists, love the weather, love the science, absolutely there are avenues to go down. In fact, there may be more avenues because we're seeing more energy companies hire meteorologists. As the
Well, that's a
climate
good point.
changes, there are impacts along the coast for cities that need planning to go along with that, and they consult with meteorologists. Sports teams need weather help at some level. So there are a lot of different avenues, and many of those didn't exist when I was coming out of college.
So when you decide, when you started, I can only imagine the changes you've seen throughout the years on the weather itself, right? Boston, we depend on weather. I don't know that I know anybody else, another culture, another area that is so weather dependent like it is right here in New England.
Yeah.
What is it like to see the changes that have been happening in global, warming and in all of these?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, Gabby. And there's so much debate about global warming. It's become very political, and it shouldn't be because the numbers are clear. Our globe is warming. So the question is, what do we do about it? But the debate gets bogged down in what's causing it. Is it humans? Is it natural cycles? Is it a little bit of both? Like, you can't knock down forests and put up apartment complexes and expect that you're not changing the environment, or build cities like we have. Of course you're going to. All you have to do is step out on a grassy surface on a hot day, barefoot. It's nice and cool. Then step on the pavement and you burn your feet. So you can see the difference very easily with that simple
Absolutely.
experiment. So what I've seen over the years, of course, the numbers say the temperature is rising. Here in New England, it hasn't been as stark a difference as other parts of the world. And that's part of the challenge here, to get people to react to it. The city of Boston certainly has done a lot of that to try to get ahead of the curve. Building along the coast has to be changed. Basically, what I preach is adaptation, because we're not going to stop the earth from warming at this point. We can slow it down. We can go with alternative sources of fuel, but you can't possibly power the entire U.S., at least not yet, with solar, wind, and water.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
So what are, speaking of challenges, what are the challenges when it comes to dealing with the different, or what's the science, I should say, what's the science between getting out in the morning and being freezing cold, and then at noontime it's like so warm, and then again it gets a little chilly, and then it's snowing? Like, why is it in just 24 hours it's so changing?
It really can, and in some parts of the country more than others. You may have seen in the news recently that Denver, Colorado had a snowstorm at the beginning of May, and that's a place that is often, because of the mountains there, they can have snow, and if the wind shifts, it can be 80 degrees the next day. It's happened many times. And in New England, of course, we have a situation that changes all the time too, and it's just a matter of living in these mid-latitudes on the globe where you have clashing air masses, the polar air masses and the tropical air masses, both fighting for control of the U.S., and those collisions make everything happen.
When you're telling the story, right? Because we rely a lot on your messaging, like what's happening with the weather, especially because it affects, like you're saying, either you're playing the sport, managing a business, or even walking on down the street. You need to be trustful, and people need to believe in you. What do you think is happening now with all these fake news, and how is that affecting when you're giving this information, you're so likable and so lovable. Here in New England, people really appreciate you, and I bet they miss you. What is it like, and what is the trust that you build in order to communicate?
Well, first, thank you for saying that. That's very sweet. I you build it over years of getting the forecast right, being accurate, being accessible, and being friendly. When people meet you in public, you give them time, and that's the kind of trust you build up over many years. And one of the amazing things since leaving Boston 25, my last day was February 27th. Contract ended. So since then, I've had many emails and messages from people. And what you don't realize is along the way, Gabby, you're touching lives. And along the way, you don't know that. And it's the people that you were nice to. One woman wrote to me with a picture of myself and her daughter in 3rd or 4th grade. And she went on to study meteorology. And she always said it was because of that day that I was in her class. And that's the best example of all the ones that I've had. Look, we get, with the these days of social media, most of the messages we get are not positive.
Yes.
When they write to us through social media, it's usually something nasty or negative.
How do you take that?
You have to grow a thick skin. It was very personal at first. And the reason for that is...
Because you didn't get that before. It was just like as time changed.
People would have to take the time to write and put a stamp on an envelope and send it to you and nobody took the time to do that.
Yeah.
And they couldn't call you at the station. Those all got flagged by the people at the front desk. So now it's so easy, and you can be anonymous and you can hide yourself. So those are most of the messages you get, and the people on television and radio still get, unfortunately. But upon leaving, the messages I got were a whole different tune. It was suddenly all the people who cared about you or you cared for them were writing and expressing that. And that's the biggest lesson I've taken out of leaving the broadcasting business, is that you have a lot of power.
Well, you did a lot for the community, though. Well, you were very much so involved. You also received awards and recognitions. And, that has to leave a mark.
I guess so. It seems like it has. I never really worried about the awards. And I know that sounds like something who doesn't win awards would say. I was nominated for I lost count at 25 Emmys, never won, not once. And that's fine. I kind of happy I have the record now for the most nominations without winning. Yes. So it's like Susan Lucci and All My Children had that record back in the daytime days. I don't know if it's really a record, but it's kind of, at the end I was like, I don't want to win one. I want to go out with the 0 and have that mini record. But to be recognized in any way by any kind of award is always a nice thing. It's not what it's about, though.
And I saw it because we both shared one of those Emmy nominations events. I don't know if you remember, but it was really nice to see how people appreciate your work, and they know exactly what it takes to be part of that. I mean, a nomination is not just one paper. It's like really the hard work that you put throughout the days and the discipline. And you were talking about how your day has even changed because you dedicated 30 years to being behind, doing the math and the science, and then to give us all that information. And you were always reliable. You were always there. How does that affect your personal life, though? Like your schedules, your kids, like you have to run around, and you're always in that pattern, right?
Yes, and that's another reflection I've had recently too. Looking back at that, there are times I can tell you a couple of stories. First of all, the general story is I never had a snow day with my kids. So my sons, who are now 29 and 26 this summer, never had because every snow day I had to be at work. And there were times you stay overnight, and sometimes for days at a hotel or even at the station on a couch. And that's just the business. That's what you do when you're...
Ask them for grandchildren now. So we can
no rush on that. No rush on that.
Play in the snow.
Grandpa Kevin, I don't know about that. But that's a really good question about that. So there was another time, and this is a little more personal, but I'll tell you if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
There was a tornado warning. It was in July of 2019. And I remember starkly because there was a tornado on Cape Cod. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty rare to have tornadoes on Cape Cod, although there have been more in recent years. And that morning I had a call from my sister that my mom was being placed into hospice. So I was planning the trip to go down to see her and say our goodbyes. And mom had cancer. So that warning came out, and I detoured to work to get on the air and to get people. I thought, she's going in this morning. People don't typically go into hospice and right away die. But I came to the station and I tracked that storm, was on the air for our viewers, and went to the airport and got the call at the airport that she had passed away.
Nice.
And, if I could do that over, of course, I would just get on the plane. And that's a hard lesson to learn, but you get so dedicated to your craft and so dedicated to being there all the time and wanting to be there for everybody who's watching you, and sometimes you lose sight of what's most important. And that day I certainly did.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
No, thank you. But
and it's actually a reality check, because sometimes we get so deep carried away into our passion and our responsibility, right? What would you tell or advise anybody that's going through that situation just now?
Well, generally, and it applies to anything, if you're in a situation like that, get on the plane. You have to take a step back. See, in broadcasting, when you first start out, you get into TV and you have an on-air role, it's so exciting to you that you never want to lose that adrenaline. You never want to lose that position. So you don't take a day off. You don't want to take that vacation, or you don't want to miss a shift because you're afraid to lose that spot to somebody else. And that fear drives you when you're early in your career. Now that may have changed now because, people seem to care more, especially the younger generation cares more about their time and puts more effort into that. And that's a smart thing to do. And it's not easy to do, to step back and
I don't think it's that different. I think it's actually, if you think about the way we're communicating today, it's more available, and it's so available because everything is on the phone.
Good point.
That you're actually missing out the present. Yeah. And I see it with the younger, like even me, like sometimes I'm spending time with my mother and I know that I have so many weekends left, because she's older and if you make the math, it's gonna be just 20 weekends? I don't know. If you realize that, and I'm on the phone or I'm filming or I'm doing this, or it's just precious, and we don't realize that. So I don't think it's just the screen side of the fear probably of losing a job, of course, but it's also, I think, like we're losing perspective of what's happening today now.
But it's the same lesson, although in a different form, that our parents taught us. They always were telling us, get out there and play with your friends, get out in the yard, don't sit here and watch TV. So every generation doesn't listen. We didn't listen to our parents, and we did exactly the same things that they were doing. And hopefully for some people, maybe some listening to us will realize the importance of that. It's not just this old guy who's now out of TV telling you, yelling at clouds and saying, you got to do this. It's really so important. And unfortunately, you don't want to learn the hard way. And I did that day. I learned the hard way that you've got to really focus on what's most important.
Did you change ever since that happened?
Definitely. So that was 2019, and in the last 7 years, I've definitely taken my time back. Even when I was working at Boston 25, I took more days off. I wasn't as concerned about, that was later in my career too, so I wasn't as concerned about losing my position where I was. But I took the time. Still, not every time. If you counted my days off, I still never took the amount of days that I could have taken off. But that's just part of the business, and that's what you do. But I started dedicating more time to the community, as you had mentioned, doing more community events, and being more present, because that's where the importance is. And now that I'm not in broadcasting, that's all I'm doing, is just enjoying every moment.
That's beautiful. You mentioned something about tornado, and it brings me back to 2011. There was a massive tornado, remember?
Oh, of course.
And then you go to 2015 when we have that massive storm, the snowstorm. You were on screen telling us and advising about the weather.
Yeah.
What happens? And because this is a Hispanic show as well, and we are a community-based program. How can we help you guys, meteorologists, or the system, announce this danger? How do you plan it? How do you communicate it that you can actually be proactive and be safe, right?
That's a question that's been taken up a lot in recent years. The National Weather Service has started in some offices where there is a higher concentration of a Latino Hispanic community putting their discussions out in Spanish as well. But of course, it's not just Spanish.
No,
Here
you
in
have
Boston.
Asians and you have, like French and there's so
Portuguese
many
and- yeah.
languages, yes.
Of course, that's a really difficult thing. I think, though, that's going to be helped a lot. And I'm just off the cuff here,
AI.
but now that we have AI, I have the Meta glasses. I should have brought them in here to
Yeah, that would be
demonstrate,
fun.
but I can turn them on so that if you're speaking Spanish to me, it'll in my lens translate it,
Translates it.
so that I know what you're saying. I can't answer you in Spanish very well. I can a few words here and there, but at least I know what you're saying, and then I could answer you. And if you had the classes, you could translate my English to Spanish, and we could have a conversation. So with AI able to do that now, it's much easier for an alert to go out and immediately be translated and sent to whoever's receiving that alert.
Yeah.
And you should be able to, on your phone, set it for that language, and it should come across to you. So that's the future. I think it should become easier to get those messages out. That's been a real blind spot.
What can we do as individuals, right? Because you were talking about the infrastructure, how these infrastructure in big cities changes and affects the weather and the climate and whatnot. What can we do in a personal level? Like if I'm waking up, leaving my house, is there anything that I can do to help with climate change? Is there anything that I can do to prepare for those situations of danger in weather,
Well, as far as climate change, really hard as for an individual to make a big impact. Of course, things are parents, so let's turn off the
How
lights.
about
and things
education?
like that.
Is it
Absolutely, yes. The education part of it, no doubt. Know what's out there, and but as far as like doing something individually, these changes have to come at a much larger scale than we can do individually. Still, it's be attentive to things that you can do that are more environmentally friendly, of course, but it's going to have to come at a higher level. As far as the dangers, though, you just have to be very aware of what's happening with the weather, and that's not because I'm a meteorologist. Just because if you're planning a summer day and you're going to go out in a boat, for instance, from Boston, you really need to know are there going to be storms later on. So you need to check on that. And there are definitely ways to get alerts on your phone from your favorite television station or from the National Weather Service that will let you know if a storm is coming your way. You don't want to be stuck out in the middle of the ocean with a thunderstorm coming your way. It's dangerous. Or just at a baseball game with your kids or anything that you're going to. There was a concert a few years ago, Lana Del Rey played a show at
Yes,
Fenway
my
Park.
daughter missed it and she was so upset.
Well, she was only there for one night.
Yeah.
And at 8:30 that evening, now I was doing the forecasting for the Boston Red Sox back then, so I was talking to them, but they didn't make the call because it was a concert. But I was telling them, boy, you got to get these people to safety. There was a big storm coming. So at 8:30, they decided to clear the field, bring everybody into the underneath
yeah.
the stands, and she didn't go back on until 10:30. So and only played for 1 hour because of that. And that was a dangerous situation. A thunderstorm with tens of thousands of people standing
People don't
together.
take it seriously.
They don't, and they have to.
And I even have a friend that got struck by lightning.
I was just about to say that, Gabby. If one person, if you're all together, tens of thousands of people, and one person gets struck, that electricity jumps to people around you. So you can take out a lot of people at one time with one lightning strike in a situation like that. That's very dangerous. So you have to be aware of what's going on with that.
For people that are listening to us right now, they cannot see, but we have another friend here. His name is Chief. He's an adorable Chihuahua mix. And it just made me think, I'm a dog lover, I have dogs. What do we do in those cases with our animals?
Whew.
You're talking about protecting the people that are at the stadium, but if I'm walking my dog and then all of a sudden these sort of storms come by and I'm not aware of the weather, how can I protect my pets?
That's a great question. You take them with you wherever you're going to get them to safety. But if there's loud thunder, a lot of dogs, for instance, will be very scared by that, just like they are for fireworks, and might want to run away from you. If there's weather nearby, first of all, you have to
And they
leash them at
feel
that
it
point.
too, don't they? Because I can tell my dog gets
Right.
anxious before even. Why? What's the science behind that?
I don't know the science behind that, but I know what you're talking about. Even as something as simple as a dog in the neighborhood, he'll know before I see that dog coming that
Yeah.
there's a dog coming. So certainly with weather too, and dangerous situations, they're hyper alert ahead of where we are. So maybe take some cues from them. But I would say, if you know a storm is on the way or you've been alerted to that, get them on the leash if it's a dog, and bring them wherever you're going so they don't run away if they're scared and get into a dangerous situation. But this guy doesn't go many places without me, so he'll be
so
okay.
he's safe. What's next for Kevin?
I've been taking some time to myself. We spent a month out in California, and while I was there, I started doing some research and talking to some people about different ways weather can fit. And what I mean by that, I don't mean weather forecasts. We all get weather forecasts on our phone, get them for free from TV. It's easy, right? But what I'm more interested in is adjacent to what I did with the Red Sox, and that is fit into an operational scheme. Help them make decisions that can save lives and save money for that company. And if there's an avenue to do that, that's what I'm exploring right now. I'm not in a hurry. I want to learn about it and then make a move, but that's where my headspace is.
So how about FIFA and the World Cup? You're going to have so many people from around the world. Is the city prepared weather-wise?
I don't know what they have for a weather structure. I have to imagine, since it's been planned for years, that they've thought about this already. It's a little late to get into the game for me, but I would certainly hope that they have.
But it could be a potential way, right, or platform. Not this particular World Cup, but anything else that is coming in that end.
Anything that's going to have that many people outdoors for an event, both out in the parking lot and then inside the stadium and then getting to the train, whatever they're doing. Absolutely, that's going to be a big part of it.
And you mentioned something very true about the energy, right? Solar energy and whatnot. I don't know if you know this, but David Ortiz, Big Puppy, and I have a company, and we do a network of charging stations for electric vehicles.
Oh, no kidding.
So,
amazing.
And it's very important because our company, we have the only patent in the world for cold weather charging. Because who knew, right? It affects the way you charge the battery because of the temperatures are so low. There's a conductor and you don't do it the same way. But I bet that's something to that extent bigger, obviously. And, in that arena could be a great fit for a meteorologist where,
that's very interesting.
You should know what the weather temperature does with energy, when it charges and how it charges and how it affects also holding that energy in a battery. I've learned so much about it now.
Batteries will definitely lose power faster in cold weather. So that's a really interesting concept. The electric vehicle industry took a hit when the benefits went away with the new administration. So I thought we were really on a pretty big trajectory upward with electric vehicles. That's kind of stalled. I hope that that we can get back to adding more. And
do you think that really helps the final goal of climate change and saving?
Yeah, it's going to take more than that, no doubt. But if someday we're all to go electric, there's going to be a big benefit. But keep in mind, Gabby, when you have electricity that's being produced somehow, whether it's solar or wind or water, and if those aren't working, you need a backup, and the backup is always going to be fossil fuels, unless we go back to accepting nuclear, which, in the 70s there were a couple of accidents that people were like, no more nukes, and a lot of the plants shut down. The one in Plymouth shut down within the last several years. So that's the cleanest of the options, but it comes with the other drawback of what do you do with the nuclear waste afterwards, and what if there's an accident? So there are options beyond fossil fuels, but it's hard not to have them as a backstop because you've got to power the place, and we need everything we have. People will say, well, we need to get off fossil fuels. Okay, well, you just wrote me that on your phone that you're using after charging using fossil fuels.
Yeah.
What are you going to do if we take that fossil fuel from you and you can't write on your phone anymore or write an email or a text? And that gives people pause. They don't know how to answer that. So it's nice that you and Big Bobby are coming up with a solution.
Well, now, and our audience knows now that Kevin is looking for that next big thing when it comes to changing the world with meteorologist science. And where can we follow you, Kevin?
Gosh, I really don't have much. The only thing I have left is an X account.
Okay.
And that's...
Well, they can send me your messages. I'll pass them along.
If you want to go to the X account, it's at KPL Weather. It's my initials, KPL. But it's not, I'm not as active as I was when I was broadcasting. Perhaps that'll change in the future when something gets going. But for now, kind of taking it in.
Well, I can't wait to hear what's next for you. And please, if you do something big, come back and tell us all the story. We'll be so happy to host you again. Y ya lo sabe, mi gente. Please download that iHeart app and select Qué Pasa Boston as your favorite podcast. We're going to hear more from more guests. And the last question I have for you, Kevin.
Yes.
We have a tradition here at Qué Pasa.
Okay.
The guest that was before leaves a question for you, and then you leave a question for somebody else.
Okay.
You don't know who it is, and they're not going to know who gets the question, right? So the last question what was it? If you could change one thing of your life, what would you change?
I would have been more cognizant of the times that I was missing putting so much effort into my career.
And we know now why.
Yeah.
How about the question you want to leave for somebody else?
Oh, do you want me to come up with one right now? Does it have to be a deep question?
It could be whatever. What's the weather tomorrow? Whatever you want.
I would like to know if there was one weather event growing up that made you interested or scared or uninterested in meteorology.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Cada domingo te traemos las historias, voces y ritmos que hacen única a nuestra comunidad.